All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, today we're going to be continuing our tafsir. It's kind of just a little bit, okay? Of course, we're doing this ayah, قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِي مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُهُ إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ مَيْتَةً أَوْ دَمًا مَسْفُوحًا. So we went in details in regards to the tafsir for this ayah, but we basically went in accordance with what was important based on al-Qurtubi in the tafsir for this ayah. And of course, what al-Qurtubi was doing was taking us into the different books of fiqh and the different scholars of jurisprudence and how they understood this ayah. And we basically went into the differences of opinions in regards to one, the chronology for this ayah. And when you say the chronology for this ayah, you're talking about is it Meccan or is it Madani? And what the implication would mean if you were to say that this is Madani is that two options. This can mean, if you are to say that this is Madani, that was basically the ayah that was abrogating each and every single thing that was considered as forbidden before. So that was either going to be considered that this is exclusive, only these items, one, blood or gushing blood or something that's a dead meat, or pork are the only things to be haram, and therefore considering it as an abrogating ayah for all the previous. Number two, number two implication would be that no, not necessarily is it, even if it was, or if to assume that it was one of the final ayat revealed, or at least in Medina, that would not necessarily be as exclusive, but that would be inclusive along with the other things that were mentioned prior to this ayah, if we are to assume that it was Madani, and therefore all the other things that were mentioned before, this is basically including all those items plus this. Now, the majority of the scholars considered it as a Meccan ayah, which basically means it was revealed before the time of Hijrah. And therefore, that would mean also two things. Number one, the first group of scholars, they said, well, that was the beginning, and therefore a response to the disbelievers when they had basically been putting their own legislation in regards to what meat is allowed and what meat is not allowed, and who is permitted to eat from this and who isn't, and therefore being selective in their legislation. So you had the first group of scholars basically considered that this was a response to the disbelievers, and therefore what is really mentioned in this ayah is not inclusive, but was a response, and not necessarily saying that this is exclusive to these items and never anything to be considered as forbidden. And certainly no scholar ever said that certain items other than these items were not necessarily haram. To give an example, alcohol or even we're talking animal droppings or things of that sort. Everyone agreed that these things are considered impure, these things are haram, and that they were actually later, let's say, taught by the Prophet ﷺ that these things are haram to consume, drink, or eat, or even use in any shape or form. Now, having that being said, the second implication they would consider, at least based on saying that it was Mecca, they said, well, قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِي مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيْهِ. So basically meaning that up until this day, this is the only thing that was revealed onto me up until the day of this revelation for this ayah, and in response to the disbelievers, that it would be exclusive to these items alone up until this day. In other words, if it's Meccan, which is the majority of the scholars' opinion, they said if we're looking at it, so that kind of supported even those scholars that considered that it was Madani. They said this, لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرمة, up until this day, there isn't something that I know that is based on the revelation that is considered as impermissible to consume except these items. Okay, now going further, we basically went into discussing all the different kinds of animals that basically were something similar, at least in some ways, to these animals. So we talked about one, carnivore animals, whether birds or even just different mammals or even other animals that are considered as carnivore animals. So we went in details with that. We talked about different types of animals that are not necessarily carnivore, but can be considered as omnivores, or maybe even considered as, sea animals or partial sea animals, like crocodiles and alligators and so forth, or even animals like frogs and all of that. I know it may sound disgusting for some, but I thought it would be very important for us to cover this since al-Qurtubi wanted to talk about it. And certainly not only because al-Qurtubi wanted to talk about it, but it would be important for us to learn our deen and see the methodology of researching on fiqh. This is extremely important. What I care more about, I know, in majority and the dominant answer, and I would say the dominant taste even for talking about these animals is that majority would consider that just discussing it is disgusting on its own. But I would say I don't really care much about the animal itself as much as I care learning the methodology of how we research and how we see these scholars research these types of animals, or even research the whole idea or the whole method of investigating different matters in Islam. This is what I really care about the most. It's pretty much like usul al-fiqh, because if we don't have the foundation of understanding and the foundation of how we research, then we're going to be easy targets to the different misconceptions out there, especially in a postmodern world when, of course, everything is considered as relative, in a postmodern world where everything is considered that we're the center as human beings, we're individualism, there's no truth but one truth, that there is no truth. And of course, in a postmodern society, we could see that many Muslims are importing such a vision, such a culture, such an ideology without them realizing. So, like I said, what I care about most is not necessarily whether you're going to be deciding to make me a biryani using lion's meat or not. That's not my issue, because I know that that's not going to be your taste, but I'm really keen about seeing how scholars researched these matters and why we have to learn it. This is the most important thing. Okay, so we left off talking about aklil jalala. Okay, this is sooner than I thought. So I'm not going to stop right here, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to mute myself for a little bit. I'm going to just hold on. I'm going to mute myself for a little bit, and I'm going to stop the live stream and come back to it.